What is going on, everybody? Back with another stream. I'm going to pick up where I left off. Jeez, I don't even know. It's a gorgeous day outside. I'm feeling good, and so let's get into it. Also, I finally nailed down a stream schedule. I'm thinking Mondays and Tuesdays, like 6:30 to 9. That's really the best I can do. I can't space it out, unfortunately, but Mondays and Tuesdays, I will be here working on this bad boy. So this stream, I want to focus on finishing these rivets. Yep, I got the camera on them already. Thinking I want to mask off this mask. I didn't realize that until I just said it out loud. We're gonna mask that off. We're gonna do a direct painting here. And if that gets done, I'm thinking the masking itself is probably gonna take quite a while. But once that's done, might move into finishing some of the flesh indirect. But that's a long way off. So first step, actually, before anything else, I have a name to add to the wall. Ramses COVID. I don't know if you're watching this. You followed sometime between my last stream and now. I have to add you to the wall. So where is a good place? First off, is my camera out of focus? One second. I think we're better. Wait. I don't know. I can't tell. Anyway, Ramses COVID, thank you for the follow. Where are we going to put you? I'm thinking like right here. All right, I'm going to try and do this sideways. This is harder than it looks. All right, we're good. So, as always, if you like the stream, please consider following. You don't have to. I'm not gonna be upset if you don't. Let's get started. Start on these rivets. I have 3 more to do here. Last time we did like a dozen or something. I think we left off somewhere around here before, and we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We talked about the importance of counting things when they're repetitive and making sure that you're working on the one that you're actually working on, and treating them all differently, because if you just make a bunch of ovals in a row, it's going to look like a bunch of ovals in a row and not actual rivets on an existing chair with imperfections. And that's what's going to make your painting look real. So I'm going to get my source material up here and we'll get started. So again, I'm going to be doing some things I talked about last stream, which are organizational lines, measuring, working with angles to make sure that we get exactly what we want. You probably can't see it, but there is a very faint grid structure here, and we're using that to make sure that we're placing things exactly where they are. We are not going to, worry about, our ego and oh, I can draw super good and everything's perfect. No, we're not leaving anything up to chance. Everything is going to be exactly where it is, and if it's not, if we double check it, we're wiping it and we're starting over. So I'm just going to get started on these rivets. Oh, yep, by the way, I'm going to be down on my knee while I'm doing a lot of this lower stuff. I won't be here, but you'll just see my head bobbing up and down. Also, please do not mind my quarantine haircut. I did it myself. I know it looks bad in the back. Please don't tell me about it. So actually, before I get down and start working these, again, some of the stuff I'm using my oil medium. This is important to use with oil and not your paint thinner, Herpenoid, whatever you want to call it, whatever you're using. This doesn't want to be on here. And this is open. Thank God this didn't fall off. That would have been a literal catastrophe. But, so we're using this to thin our paints. We're using Winton by Winsor Newton. It's heavy body, as basically all oil paint, meaning it's more like toothpaste than your typical like paint that comes in a tube, like acrylic or tempera or whatever that stuff's called. So we're going to be putting some of this on my palette. Again, I'm not going to focus on my palette with my secondary camera because there's not a whole lot to see. I'm really just using this one color for now. Possibly when we get into this, I might, but my palette is such a mess right now, it's not really worth looking at, to be honest. So, I'm gonna get some medium going here. I want to mix it until it is the consistency of milk. That's how we know we're ready to go. If it's any thicker than milk, it's not going to flow, and we want very fine lines. And if it's too thick, it's just going to glob up and it's all going to come off at once. And if it's too thin, it's going to be, first off, transparent, which could be a good thing. But also, if you're working with fine lines, yes, it'll be transparent, but it'll also bead up like water on glass or something. So you definitely want to get the right consistency here. And I just got it. You want to drag the brush out on your palette and twist a little bit. It's going to maintain that fine point, and that fine point is what we need to get these super fine lines in this pattern in the rivets. So we'll start with, I have 3 more rivets to do. I'm going to start from the right and move left, and then do the pattern around it as we get to it. So I'm going to get down here and we're going to start. So the next rivet that I see is slightly higher than this one, if we take perspective into consideration. So we definitely don't want it to just follow the same line, parallel to the top and bottom of the section. You can kind of see it right now. There's a seam here. And rather than painting a line for the seam, we're painting up to the edge from one side and up to the edge from the other. Because we don't want to paint what our brains tell us a seam is. We want to paint what we're actually seeing. And we can't see those threads. We can't see a dotted line. We can't see a solid line. All we see is a pattern changing and a very subtle shadow where the 2 pieces of fabric kind of go in on each other. So we're not making a line. Yes, it's not quite as obvious at this point, but once we've painted and it's, 2 full color patterns bumping up against each other, it's going to be real obvious that it's a seam there. We're going to add a little bit of shadow, and it's going to make it very, very clear that it's a seam, and it's going to represent reality, and it's not going to be what our brains say it could be. Just like making rivets, you don't want to make ovals. So I'm going to shut the hell up as I talk too much, and we're just going to start plotting this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure an angle from some things that I know are correct. I know that these rivets are correct. I know that this is correct. I've painstakingly plotted all of this. I'm very confident. If I wasn't confident, I wouldn't use these things as reference points. So I'm going to measure an angle from the top of this rivet that I have, and it's definitely up higher than what this one is. So we're going to mark that. You'll see that was a big chunky line, and that's not necessarily what I want, but it's okay for now. Next, we're going to plot the bottom, and it's relatively similar. What we're going to do is I'm going to test these now. So I'm going to triple check, because humans are bad at judging angles. So if you're working with angles, you specifically want to triple check. If you're working with something like distances that are, you can objectively measure them, those are things you don't necessarily need to do 3 times. You might be comfortable doing 1. Depends on how comfortable you are with the process. I don't typically use measurements too much, or measuring in general, unless I'm drawing from life. I almost always use angles, measuring off of established parts of the painting or drawing, and I use the corners of my grid, which you probably can't see. Maybe you can, I'm not sure. There's one right there, and you can definitely see one right there. And those are the most important thing when laying everything out. And that's still what I'm doing here. I'm just laying out the paintings so that when I actually put the paint down that you're going to see, I know where it's going to be. This is all going to get covered up. Even though I spent, I don't know, a dozen hours on this damn thing. It's all going to be covered up, but it's going to make my top layer painting, my direct painting, much, much easier. I can focus on color. I'm going to shut up and keep talking. Just going to do this damn rivet. So we have the top and bottom. I'm going to triple check my bottom angle. That is something I did not check yet, and that is good. This is all dry, even though I worked on it last week. Typically something this thin and this light is going to dry or cure in a few days. It'll be dry to the touch, and now it's a week, and it's pretty much, not going anywhere. Depending on how thick it is, it could take weeks. Actually months, and sometimes a year or more if it's super thick, but don't worry about that. Yo, Jonestar 186. Thank you for the follow, man. You need your name added to the wall. So, where are you feeling? You feeling over here? Feeling over here on the edge? Let me write that down. 186. Give me some space with it. Okay, you'll get some space. Oh Jesus! Definitely don't want to trip over my camera cable. That would not be a good thing. All right, so some space. You want like this kind of space we're talking, or we're just gonna wait. This is actually the hardest spot, which is why it's still empty, because there's not actually a wall behind this. My wall ends right here. So it's going to be extremely difficult to do this, but we're going to see what happens. So, make sure we're not way off from it. All right, so perfect. All right, so is it, I know I have a preconceived notion of what this is, but is it Joan Star? Because I'm going to have to go to a new line unless we're going to piss off Havoc 1123 if we encroach on their space. So we're doing Joan Star, or maybe I can fit it in there. Oh God. I don't know if you can hear that. I hope you can't. Someone is mowing their lawn. Let me know if that is a problem, and I will get it sorted out. But I'm pretty sure my audio is in a good place. I also have music going at the same time, and it's not picking up on my microphone, so I think we're good. So, all right, I'm taking creative liberty, and it's going to be Joan Star. 2 separate words here. And then 186. Wham, there we are. Thank you, Jonestar186. All right. Also, if you have any questions or want to heckle me or do whatever the hell you want, just put something in chat. I'm open to answering questions, whatever you want to hear, about whatever, painting, whatever. So, back at it. So this one is a little bit further away from this one than this one is to this one. So there's a bit more space in between them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare the right edge of this, and actually not necessarily the right edge, but the tip. I'm going to work with the tips because they seem to come to points. Oh dang. Hera Rituals. That's hard to say. Thanks for the follow, Hera Rituals. And we'll get your name up here. Where are you feeling? Here? Any preference? If not, I'll wing it. I got to write this one down. I can't say it, let alone remember how to spell it. All right, Herere. Oh, it's not ritual. It's Hera Rituals. Why do I feel like I'm saying that horribly wrong? Anyway, if there's no preference, I'm just going to wing it. I'm feeling like, here. Does look good? Let's do it. This one is going to be this one. So, I hope you can read that. That is kind of small, but I think it's still legible. If it's not, then just give me shit and I'll do something about it. All right, so Hera Rituals, thanks again for the follow. I'm gonna get back to this rivet. So, like I was saying, we're gonna plot the top and bottom because they kind of come to a point because of the way that the perspective is going back. They're almost like a little, seed or football or something like that. So to plot this top point, I'm going to use the left edge of this. This is like the middle of a flower, the stamen or whatever the hell it's called. And we're going to use that to plot this point. So if we take where that meets the seam, we're going to find that angle, and that's going to be the tip of our rivet. So, I'm talking like right there. So, I'm kind of concerned. I'm not sure if that's accurate. I'm going to double check. Now, one thing, if you're working on your own oil painting, you want your source material to be up here next to where you're doing, or if you're working from life, you want your easel to essentially be pointed slightly off to the right or left of what you're painting on, so there's minimal movement when you're actually painting and looking between the two. I don't have that luxury. I could tape my iPad up here. I'm not gonna do that. So my iPad is actually laying flat. That's really bad, especially when you're this low. You have to be extra careful of what I'm measuring. So don't do what I'm doing, because it sucks and it's hard, and I have to contort my body to actually get this right. But I'm all right with it. So this actually is slightly off. So it's slightly more to the left. And then to plot the bottom, we're just going to take a line down through that top point, and it's going to go through the bottom, and we have our top and bottom plotted. And so now we're just going to get rid of everything else. Wipe it away, doesn't matter. Even if it's sloppy, even if you don't get it all, that's all right, because this is all just going to be covered up anyway. Now, this is something you obviously don't want to necessarily do if you're working on like a top layer. You definitely don't want to do this. You may want to get like a paper towel, put some Turpenoid or paint thinner on it, and wipe an entire area clean. That works really well. For now, I'm just rubbing it off on that hole, all going to be covered. So, I'm going to start with the right edge of this. And the right edge kind of comes out like that, and then it's mostly flat. The entire right edge, and then the bottom angles up like this. I'm just going to clean that up a bit. Now the left edge is pretty much rounded like you would imagine this type of rivet would be. So we do that, and we have a seriously huge issue, and that is this thing is friggin' enormous. So at all points you want to be questioning, is this accurate? And I asked myself that, and the answer was absolutely no, this is awful. And what happened? Bad angle measurement. So we're going to bring that back down a bit, and you'll see how off that was. That is really, really off. So we're talking there like that. My point is here. And you can see how easy that is to wipe clean. Now we're actually going to wipe off some of that left edge too. We're going to fix that right edge. And now we have a much more respectable rivet. Now, this still isn't quite what I'm seeing in my source material. So it's too wide. I mean, in my source material, it is a little bit wider than this one, and actually I could make this one a little wider because that's what I'm seeing. I'm not going to worry about that too much. Actually, to make it thinner, I'm going to bring the right edge rather than the left edge. I think the left edge is pretty good. So we're going to bring that in and cut that down. Now, one thing you can do is if you want to be really precise, you can do this, and that'll sometimes do what you're looking for. It's much better if you're doing it like interior to your paint, if that makes any sense. I don't know if it does. In this case, it doesn't work too great. So I'm just going to wipe that off. We're going to bring this down. I know this angle comes up here, and there we have our rivet. So at this point, we're just going to paint in the value. So a lot of these have a similar shadow pattern, which is dark on the bottom half, you know, along this angle, and then the very top here. And again, that's not going to be final. It's going to get covered up, but it's still good to know where my shadows are when I come back in with my color. I'll know to mix the darker color there. Although most of these rivets are pretty dark anyway, so there's not going to be a whole lot of difference between the highlight and the shadow. So again, like always, this underpainting, I'm going to just tap it and bring it down in value, make it lighter, because we don't want this to be so dark that it competes with anything else, even in this underpainting stage. The lighter the better. So I'm just going to try and blast through these last two so we can work on some new stuff, because I did this for like 2.5 hours or something last stream. So at this point I could work on the pattern around it, I'm gonna hold off on that. I'm gonna do the next rivet, and then we'll start worrying about some of the pattern there. So we're gonna plot this. This seems to be relatively in line. They're pretty much even if you consider the perspective. So the bottom edge. And then to plot the top point, I'm going to use this here. So I know that it's like this angle here. So it's like right there. Now this one is much closer to this one. I do want to double check though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plot the tip of this. And it's pretty much spot on where it is. I think that makes sense too. So then I'm going to drop a line through the rivet, and we're going to get the bottom corner. And it does seem really close. I am questioning this quite a bit. But we're gonna paint it and we're gonna see how it goes. So this one does actually have more coming off the left side than the right. So let's just see how it goes. I'm gonna get rid of these now before I paint too much. It's just gonna be easier to clean up now. And we're gonna bring this down. Just kind of curls around and then it's kind of flat. And you'll see this is much closer to this one than this one. And that is exactly what I'm seeing in my source. Sometimes you want to correct some things, and maybe your source isn't always right. In this case, it's pretty clear that these aren't perfectly uniform. It's not, you know, mechanical in how they're placed. So things like this are going to give it more character. It's going to look more realistic. So I'm just going to keep it for now. We'll see how it looks with the last rivet, and if it's just crazy, we'll do something about it. But for now, that is where it's going to be. Well, I am going to take a step back and make sure there's nothing glaring about it. I do think that the bottom needs to be a little higher, so I'm just going to take it off with my finger, clean up that line I had there. All right, and then we're going to focus on the value. Again, it's just like all the others. There's almost nothing different about this one except it comes up a little higher on the right side. So we're going to fill that in. Top, like all the others, is in shadow as well, where the fabric, you know, overhangs it a bit. Now this last rivet is super small, super thin, and it's like right on the line. So I'm just gonna eyeball it because this one is actually a little different in terms of how detailed it is. It's really just this. And then my grid line kind of obscures the right edge. So we're talking something like that. This is almost entirely in shadow. So we're going to leave a little highlight there. That's all right. Pull it off a little bit. I'm going to take down this one a little bit here. And we have our rivets. All right, so now we're gonna, oh Jesus, I'm kicking the camera. We're gonna focus on some of the pattern around the outside. And it seems to be relatively easy, just some kind of lines going through it. There's no complex floral pattern or anything like there has been over here. So should be pretty quick, and then we're gonna start masking. Masking is something that, if you want to do it well, it takes a little bit of time, and might not actually do all of it. We'll see how it goes. Masking can take a notoriously long amount of time. I actually had to mask off basically every edge in this painting, and it's miserable sometimes. But we'll see how it goes. For now, focus on these. We're going to pump them out real quick. So there is what looks like a leaf right here. Just going to get that outer edge. Now, remember I said don't pick edges. In this case, we're just laying things out. So just outer edges are okay. And then this does have some petals around it. And then, yeah, that's it. Like everything else, we're gonna just lift a little bit of that. Now here, we have a line coming off of this top part, and then it kind of just goes up and connects with that pattern on the other side of the seam. I want to make sure I don't pass past the seam, because if I do that, it's going to completely ruin the illusion of the seam. And then there is this little line coming off there. This is slightly darker in this area. Remember, we're working with value, and just about everything we want to paint shapes, not lines. I say that as I'm painting lines, but that line is outlining a shape, and the shape is what's important, not the line itself. Focusing on shapes is a good way to kind of beat your brain's, understanding of an item or what it thinks it should be. If you focus on the shapes that certain colors or certain values are making, you're going to make something that's a lot more representative of reality, and you're just going to end up with a better end result than if you try and outline things. Now, depending on style, you may want to have outer lines, but in the drawing process, you don't want to start with outside lines. It's just going to give you a wonky, unnatural looking drawing. So we are going to move over here. There's actually a really dark shape right here. It's like a fold or something. We're just going to draw that in and make sure that that's on there. I actually went a little crazy with it. I got it on some of the white. You want to make sure that comes off before it dries. If you do kind of overlap and go into another area, you can wipe it off if it's not coming off entirely. Again, you can put some paint thinner on a paper towel and just very lightly wipe it. You don't want to wipe too hard, or you will take some of this cured part off as well. So this pattern kind of extends from the bottom of this one, comes out like this, and then loops back around the corner here. It is kind of dark, so I am going to fill it in before lifting it off with my finger. And we have that there. And so the very last thing is a line kind of that comes down like that through the space between these two rivets. So this will be toughest part, which is kind of why I left it for last. It's going to turn a little bit at the end. It's going to curve into that seam where those two pieces of fabric are coming together. So we want to make sure we curve into that. We want to make sure it looks like there is structure to it, and it cuts down through, and then these two lines conjoin. So they are separate. They actually kind of come through here. This line actually is broken. I don't want to paint just all the way through it because for whatever reason it's lighter there. So I'm gonna keep it like that. We're gonna paint in a little bit of a shadow on the seam area, and then this is just gonna extend down like this. And there's a little bit of a shadow underneath this that I'm just going to paint in quick. So I'm going to lift it, and you'll see that when I lifted that, I kind of mushed it and made a bigger shape than what I wanted. So I'm just going to lift that a little bit, and there. This where it's kind of like creasing or like folding a little bit. So we're going to add that in. This comes up a little higher and is kind of separated from that section I drew earlier. So there is one last little detail, which is a little like squiggly thing right here. So I want to make sure we capture that. And just like that, we are done with this chair pattern. Thank Jesus H. Christ. Finally. So I don't want to touch any of this. I want to let that cure. I'm going to start focusing on this. Now, you'll see the things that are not painted yet have a very crisp edge. And sometimes you want a crisp edge and sometimes you don't. A lot of it comes down to preference or the subject. Typically, if you want to represent a curved surface or a curved edge, you want it to be slightly blurry. If you want, a very harsh edge, so like a flat something on something else flat, or like coming off like that, so it's separate. That's when you want crisping. Now, for me, I kind of don't care about blurred edges. To me, what's more important than creating that volume that you would make with a blurred edge, I'm more worried about how these sections are all separated. And I don't care if it looks rounded or not. I am doing some things to create space in my lamps. So this back area is blurry. Some of this is going to be in shadow, for example, behind the arm and under the arm. That's going to bring this forward. Same thing over here and here where this hand is interacting here. And I'm not worried too much about curved edges. And to be honest, the curved blurry edges is a very painterly way of making edges. That's for someone which you may choose to paint this way, but someone who has really long brushes, you're really working, you're working on expressive brush strokes. You're suggesting things like a nose rather than, really putting some detail into it. That's where you want to really blur your edges. You're going to get a very painterly feel, a little bit of an expressive feel. That's something that I'm not worried about. So, I'm doing it. Now, I will be doing a bit of an expressive direct painting within this pattern. The edges, no. Sharp edges, I want them that way. I think it looks better in this specific setting. So I'm going to clean my brush real quick. It has some of this burnt umber in it. And so I'm just going to clean it off in my paint thinner. Kind of wipe the paint thinner out with a paper towel. I want to preserve the point on my brush. If you can't get it to maintain the original point. You want to dip it back in your paint thinner, wipe it again. Make sure you get that point, because if you don't, then your brush is just going to separate more and more and more every time, and this super fine detail brush is going to turn into a finger. So I'm actually going to put paintbrush away. I'll keep my medium out, and I'm just going to focus on that. So my best friend in this process is going to be this white artist tape. Now this tape has some special things about it, some special properties. First is that it's archival. So that just means there's no acid in it. If you take a normal piece of paper, like computer paper, this here, over time it's going to yellow. That's because it has acid in it. That acid is very bad. It's the same reason we prime our surface before we paint on it, because we don't want to put oil on wood or oil on canvas directly, because it's going to rot. It's a similar reason why we use archival tape. Now there is also masking tape. This is kind of a little more yellow. It's not archival. So if we put this down, that acid is going to get into the surface, and over time it's going to look bad. It will darken areas. You'll be able to see the tape where it was through paint. It'll actually come to the surface if you try and cover it up. Artist tape, white artist tape. So the other thing about this is that it doesn't have a very strong adhesive. Like, I don't know, like this will fall off. Even if you rub it down, it will lift off, and that's by design. It's very temporary, very, very temporary. So in some cases, I've tried to mask things off, and I've done something like this on an edge, and you'll see over time that will pop up, or it'll pop off this side, whichever one's adhered the least. That's so you can easily get it off. Now that does become a problem a little bit if we want it to stay for a while we paint around the edges. It can lift up and paint can go underneath, and that's kind of the biggest concern when doing this. And we're going to do some things to kind of mitigate that. But if you look real close, I'm actually going to try to adjust my detail cam here, and we're going to bring it up here. Now this, I might need to extend my tripod legs. I don't know if this will actually raise this high. So we'll see how this goes. So it's going to be a bit too high, but we'll bring this part back down. See, if I was smart, finish these rivets before the stream, and would have had this all prepared, but oh well. So I can't really get too much closer than that. Let's see if I can move this over a bit. I think that's about as good as it's going to get. But you can actually start to see what I'm going to talk about, which is these angles. So there's a reason why this shape is so angled. It has actual, like, very obtuse points if you look at it close. And the reason is because those coincide with my tape. You know, we're making a bunch of straight lines to make our angles. Now that's something that you can cover up afterwards. You know, when you're actually painting this, after you remove the tape, you can kind of smooth those out if you want. Me, I prefer them. I love them. And you won't see me get rid of them Sometimes I will, depending on what it is. Specifically, like in flush, they've all been taken out. But where I do my direct painting, where my paint is going to be a little thicker, I actually like seeing those straight lines create a curve. So, to do this, really, I'm just masking off what I don't want to paint. It's that simple. It does get a little intricate here in the smaller areas where there are smaller pieces of tape. One thing that you can also use is clear Scotch tape. This is good for detail because you can put it down and then you can use an X-Acto knife and just cut out the shape you want. So you could actually get the curves that you might be looking for this way. And once you put that down, you can then use some of your white artist tape to kind of back it up, behind the actual edge. And this is going to make it so that you don't have to, you can focus on the internal to this shape, getting your shadows right, suggesting seams if there are any, suggesting some little holes, or maybe that inner lip of the eye shape. So that's what you want to focus on. You don't want to get super intricate with your edges while you're worrying about other things. You also really don't want to cover up. If this is a combination of indirect painting and direct painting, I don't want to cover up, what I've already done here with this grisaille. The grisaille meaning it's like French for gray or something like that. This is the underpainting of white and brown, never mixed. You're just painting white into your highlights and brown into your shadows. And that, you're basically worrying about form and value first, and then you're going to glaze color over top of it. So that's why she looks like a ghost, with just like white, grayish skin. It's because that's going to be covered up with a flesh tone, actually multiple layers of different flesh tones to add depth, just the way your skin is translucent. So we definitely don't want to cover these up. If we get paint on this, this is so thin that if we try and wipe it off with our paint thinner, we're going to take some of the work we've already done off of this because it's so thin. It's going to be really hard to get that off cleanly enough to go back into our grisaille and fix it. So definitely want to mask it off. So in theory, this is going to be two different shapes here. There's going to be a shape here that we're masking off. Actually, three shapes, because we have this one here, and there's actually a little piece in the middle. So what I might do is I might just mask off one at a time so that it's not like, 10 minutes of masking. Although probably longer if I'm running my mouth while I'm doing this.